Scott Rolen is going to the Hall of Fame. What does that mean for me and BBD? It means we're going to talk about it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wake and Jake. A little baseball, a little football. Championship weekend. We start out with the baseball because we had the announcement. Scott Rolen will be joining the Hall of Fame with Fred McGriff. Nice little, how's your corner infield right there? Fred McGriff went in on the Contemporary Baseball Era Players Committee back in December. It's going to be hard to not be ridiculous about this process. Scott Rolen gets in with more than 75% of the vote. Where did he land? 76.3, 297 votes. You needed 292 to get in. So your winners, Scott Rolen, Fred McGriff. Can talk about them a little bit because BBD gave me the cute eyes this morning and said, tell me about Scott Rolen, Pa. He's good. I think the first, and I just opened Twitter for the first time. Usually play my boring Subway game on the Subway. Todd Helton, 281 votes, 72.2%. Basically, if you know how the Hall of Fame works, that means he's in next year. And it is crazy. I saw Ryan Spilborghs, who calls some of the Rockies games with Kelsey Wingert. And all-time kind of ridiculous name, Spilborghs.
Yeah, I think he does like MLB Network radio stuff. He's been like in the mix for a bit.
Back when I was heavy in my fantasy baseball days, he came up and he was hitting a little bit. And back then it was like, oh, guy comes up with the Rockies. They're going to hit. And we were making fun of his last name, and we're like, Ryan Spilborghs from the moon. Not a great joke, but it's out there now for everyone.
You had to be there, man.
It's out there now for everyone. And I guess he is like a zany guy when he calls the games and stuff. So, but he was beside himself that Todd Helton is not a Hall of Famer. And he will be, and I guess it's more so the process of baseball and how much we do this. And we had to find out more about Coors, and the common person still doesn't know or care. They just hear Coors Field, and they hear home runs, and you're going to hit more, right? Todd Helton. My goodness. How is your 2000 to 2004? For 5 years, Todd Helton averaged 349, a 450 on base, and a 1.09 OPS, a 160 OPS plus. Everyone for years thought Coors Field just cooks the books. They can help you out with your home numbers and you get a boost, but basically anything you'd get at home, you lose on the road. There's articles that can speak about it better than me. I've talked about it on here. I've talked about it on Talking Baseball. So, yeah, I think it's funny that Ryan Spilborghs, and, if you're a Rockies fan, you want your guy to go to the Hall of Fame. I get it. I was looking up third baseman, and, Greg Nettles, he's going to be your highest third baseman war-wise that's not probably going to get in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. So, some Yankee stuff there, and don't even get me going on Bernie, but maybe I will in a minute.
And Nettles in his Yankeeography, there's a bunch of guys that's like, he's the best player who's not in the Hall of Fame, which is a little Yankee, but
very Yankee.
He's got a much better argument than you'd think looking back.
And it's why baseball is beautiful. I guess that's why if you wanted to, you could get so mad at all of this. Why do we even have a system where there's 10 ballots or whatever, and we have this baseball, what's a caste system? I don't know if that works perfectly, but basically, like a first ballot Hall of Famer, we treat them differently. And small hall has become a little bit of a joke, but it's also not a joke. Todd Helton will be joining the Hall of Fame next year.
He's halfway through his eligibility and just short now, so it seems like he's got it.
Couple Gold Gloves. was really good with the stick. His stats at the time probably should have been more respected, but they weren't because of Colorado and the Rockies' effect. Now that we know more about it, we can be smarter about it. And he's an all-time peak guy. And I think for years that was held against him because of Coors Field. And I think people are now starting to realize that maybe it should not be. Man, there's going to be, coming up, we're going to have some first baseman, Albert Pujols. He's number 2 in WAR. He will be first ballot. Miggy Cabs, the WAR's not crazy. Is that right? No.
I think he has, I don't know what number you're specifically seeing, but he probably has a couple, because they made him play more third base. And he went back when they got Prince Fielder, and I'm guessing some defense stuff drags him down a bit.
That's interesting. He's
DH the last few years, so didn't compile.
2 MVPs. And he's got 3,000 hits and 500 homers, so you'd think Miguel Cabrera would be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but first base is wild, man. There's some names above him that you're like, well, Jim Tomei, Frank Thomas, Jeff Bagwell had a lot of stats. Joey Votto. Right now, Joey Votto's kind of on a line, but he's got an MVP. I say he's on a line. Rafael Palmeiro's below him, and he'd probably be in if it weren't for steroid stuff.
Yeah, just the numbers.
Keith Hernandez, Paul Goldschmidt. Okay. Todd Helton getting in is good. Well, he's not in. So Rockies fans may be mad at me. But, man, we might see a run on first baseman in future years. Between 5 years from now, Pujols, Miggy Cabs, Votto. Who knows where Goldschmidt lands? He could be. Man, first base is tough. You got to hit, huh?
Yeah, that's like the hitting position across every era.
Keith Hernandez has an argument. 60 career WAR. Olerud. Todd
Helton, the 2000 season's crazy. I know he has a 10-year peak that's all crazy, but that year, and you see he finished 5th in MVP. 372, led the league in doubles and hits with 42 homers. 5th in MVP.
Yeah, I mean, I told Jolly Olive, I don't know if it's one video, I don't know if it's a video series or whatever it is, but Jolly Olive needs to do a video series that is
needs to be the Todd Helton guy.
Reworking MVP voting and Cy Young voting, because it would change how you look at Todd Helton. Guy never finished top 4 of MVP. Well, nobody knew what they were doing.
That Rockies team finished 82 and 80, so he couldn't win MVP. That's how it worked.
Them's the rules in that time. Things have changed since then. So Todd Helton will be going in. Rockies fans very mad right now. And I get it, but I also don't. At this point, we know how the system works. I think anyone who's gotten that voting has gotten into the Hall of Fame.
Everybody, pretty much everybody increases year over year.
Yeah.
Once you've gotten over 70, you usually get in the next year.
So
he's only halfway through, which I would have guessed he was closer to the end, but
and
no,
you know
he's
what
had
it is?
So much time.
Maybe it's the last year for Rockies fans to really lean into it because he will be a Hall of Famer.
Next year, you guys should shout about it.
That's what he should have been there the whole time. So I guess that's good for Todd Helton. The guy who's going to be, I think, maybe borderline next year will be Billy Wagner, 68%. He's sneaking up. Everyone's going back and loving Billy Wagner. He kind of felt like a Hall of Famer at the time. Andrew Jones, Gary Sheffield, Beltran is the following list after that. Beltran, the more and more we do trivia around the office, the more and more you realize kind of how ridiculous it was what he did on a baseball field. Jeff Kent out. 46.5%. That was his final year on the ballot. I don't know. He was good for a couple years. I think.
Got an MVP. Got that 2000 MVP over Todd Helton.
Look at that. Kind of a tough guy, if I remember correctly.
The problem is I don't think he was very nice to the media members who got to vote on him for
Isn't
this.
That funny? But Big Papi was first ballot. Let's enjoy Scott Rolen a little more.
Jeff Kent's first All-Star game, 31.
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't know.
Yeah, the full year numbers aren't great until then, so I guess it does add up.
Teammate had something in the water. No, I'm not doing that. Jasper, Indiana. That's where Scott Rolen was born. Imagine if we did that. DraftKings, 4 teams remain. We're about to talk about them. 2 can play in the big game for championship weekend. Check out DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on either game and instantly receive an additional $200 in bonus bets. New customers bet just $5 on either NFL playoff game of their choosing, and they'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code BAKERS. New customers can bet $5 on any NFL game and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code BAKERS, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for those tales. Scott Rolen was awesome defensively, and that's where I'll start. He ended up with 8 gold gloves. I know gold gloves, kind of like I talked about with Jolly Olive's updated award shows, have been taken over time. When he was in Philadelphia, they were playing at Veterans Stadium, and the turf over there where baseballs were literally like bullets. He was one of the, when I picture that third baseman making that, like, he was almost in my head, and this is probably unfair to Scott Rolen, because he came up in 1996. This isn't like he came up in the 80s. But that plant and throw third baseman, dive to the foul line, plant, make that throw. Scott Rolen had that in his bag. He had all of it in his bag. And then the conversation kind of becomes where baseball becomes fun and ugly for almost no reason, just because we like to. Because they're 3-hour games and we like to talk. Scott Rolen, whether you go back to those Philly teams, I mean, he was, him, Bobby Abreu, Kurt Schilling, those were the dudes on those teams. I don't think they did too much of anything in Philly those years. But, 26 homers. He's got 21, 31, 26, 26, 25. So he's literally with Philadelphia. He's putting together 25 or 26 home runs, kind of like clockwork. The on-base percentage is there, which, again, you have to go back to the 90s to, that wasn't fully appreciated. I'd remember on early Yes Network broadcasts, they'd be like, you know what? And this player can walk. Paul O'Neill will take a walk. And you're like, all right. What the hell is that? Moneyball, that's gone. He goes over to St. Louis. 4th in the MVP in 2004. Part of the problem there, and BBD mentioned this beforehand, Jim Edmonds, who was awesome, the center fielder, they both one-dotted that year, OPS-wise. Jim Edmonds, Scott Rolen, third base, center field. My 2 favorite positions on the baseball field. They both one-dotted and are both, high-level gold glovers at their position. Nasty. The problem, Albert Pujols was their first baseman. So, there's an argument that on that 2004 Cardinals team that got swept by the Red Sox, by the way, that Scott Rolen was the third best player. The Scott Rolen thing that pops up, and it might get mentioned later today, and you'll see Trevor Plouffe squirm on Talking Baseball, was he ever, the best player on his team? I think for some of those Cardinals teams, I think you take Scott Rolen over for the Phillies teams, you take Scott Rolen over Bobby Abreu. The Cardinals, should he be punished from being across the diamond from Albert Pujols, who we just said is a first ballot Hall of Fame that we treat like a religion? I copied Albert Pujols' stance. Reminder, still not working. My God, Albert Pujols, how's your 1 dots? Is Scott Rolen a Hall of Famer? He is. If you really wanted to play that game, is he a small hall guy? No. I was
inner circle.
No, I mean, you go, I was just talking about, like, what this, I had the JAWS. I don't even know what JAWS means, but it just basically lists players in order. Mike Schmidt, Eddie Matthews, Wade Boggs. You know who's fourth in WAR for third baseman? Adrian Beltre.
Yeah.
Adrian Beltre, kind of a small hall guy.
Could pick it, could hit it.
27 of that is defensive WAR, which even in Adrian Beltre's time, we didn't have that figured out. Brooks Robinson gets 39.1 defensive WAR. How? I mean, he's awesome. I had a picture of him in my room growing up because I love third base defense, and he has, just a reminder, Brooks Robinson, 16 gold gloves.
They did the voting a little different then.
The voting was different.
That doesn't mean nothing.
The fact you're out there playing third base for 16 seasons is even impressive.
Yes.
Ron Santo, Paul Molitor, Scott Rolen. Now, Ron Santo, that's someone I would have to ask more people about. Chris Rose. I think, hey, come on. He would know, and he'd be excited to talk about it. Is he calling in? Normal dog in the chat, Tom Ace. That's something I'd have to ask Chris Rose. Ron Santo, talk about an interesting baseball reference. He won the Gold Glove 5 straight years. Sure. 9-time All-Star. So, if you're looking for that decade thing, which I really like for baseball, because it's tough to be really good for a long time.
Shouldn't be punished for being able to still be in the league, even if your production's down.
Especially now, between the BS, between keeping you in the minor leagues. Although if you're a guy on this level, that gets treated a little differently. But like Ron Santo, here's something that you may not have known. Ron Santo led Major League Baseball in walks 4 seasons. Did anyone care? In the 60s? From everything I know, the answer to that is no. Like they said, Ron Santo has a good eye.
That was a bonus piece about him.
Man, interesting. Him and Ron Santo are a very similar wavelength, whether you want to go modern stuff, OPS plus. Roland played for a little longer. Where we're at with the Hall of Fame, and if you've heard us talk on Talking Baseball about it, whenever this comes up or during the lockout or whenever we get there, Scott Rolen was nasty.
I voted for him when we did our Hall of Fame ballot a little over a year ago.
Only one top 5 MVP, only one top 10 MVP. Again, Jolly Olive's voting might be able to twist that a little better. This guy went to 7 All-Star games. Offensively, I think there's an argument that only my guy Brooks Robinson was a lesser offensive player, which when you view it like that becomes interesting really quick, right? Like, is Scott Rolen the worst offensive third baseman in the Hall of Fame?
It's not like the numbers he's got are, I think they're enough, but
they're really good. And yeah, it just depends who you are, right? Like if we were redoing the Hall of Fame and you were setting boundaries on it, like the top 10, the top 12 third baseman, first baseman could be in there, I don't know. It could probably get ugly over Scott Rolen. He's a guy whose career, National League, when National League and American League were still a little more cats and dogsy. So I didn't get the full dose of Scott Rolen. I caught him mostly ESPN highlights, making plays at third. I caught him fantasy baseball-wise when, like I said, a third baseman in 2004 with a 1 OPS. That was pretty special. He's got the peak. He ends up playing a while. He played till 2012. Like, that's modern.
Yeah.
That's modern baseball.
He and Trevor Plouffe played in the same seasons.
Did they face off?
Probably.
2000.
There's a Blue Jays year in there.
Your 2012 Cincinnati Reds. Joey Votto still playing. 1.041 that year, by the way. Brandon Phillips was 31. Zach Cozart at shortstop.
Yes.
Ryan Ludwig in the outfield with Drew Stubbs and Jay Bruce. 25-year-old Jay Bruce, hot, 841. Todd Frazier, 26 years old, and 829 OPS. Any good pitchers? Cueto, still doing it.
Yeah.
Matt Latos, Homer Bailey, still half doing it. I think he might have called it. Bronson Arroyo, off the ballot this year, but his windup did get copied in our office yesterday. Believe that was Dalton. Mike Leake, Aroldis Chapman is on that team. So, Scott Rolen, and when you talk about the game of baseball, he gets called up in the Phillies in 96. I mean, guys from yesteryear, Jim Eisenreich, that name won't mean a lot to a lot of people. Lenny Dykstra, Kurt Schilling, Terry Mulholland, Ricky Batalico, CCSU. Check it. I think Scott Rolen should be a Hall of Fame. I'm not a small hall guy. I think we flew past that. So, we're not doing that. The story of baseball should know Scott Rolen. That's what the Hall of Fame should mean. Let's see. 316 homers, 2,000 hits, 855 OPS, a 122 OPS plus.
Defensive stud.
Yeah, I mean,
consistent. Some very interesting names that he was traded for.
What do you got?
His career. He was traded 3 different times. He went Phillies to Cardinals. Placido Polanco went the other way.
Hot.
Then he went Cardinals to Blue Jays in a trade. Troy Gloss came the other way. And then Blue Jays to Reds. Edwin Encarnacion went the other way.
He's part of the story. I think it's interesting, and just for some more perspective on it, like I mentioned, Greg Nettles. Again, the WAR is there.
If he didn't play at the same time as Brooks, or if he had no overlap, a couple more Gold Gloves.
He'd be your Gold Glove guy, and does that make you a Hall of Famer? I don't know. Again, that's like that's a level. I shouldn't be talking about Greg Nettles. Someone would have to tell me. I've seen a couple highlights. Seen a couple highlights. He looked dope. Yeah, and the up-and-coming guys, Arenado and Machado, as they're still in their primes, those guys are going to climb the leaderboards and enter Hall of Fame territory. Our guy, Evan Longoria, this is good news for him, but he's also a step behind. Similar career offensive WAR to Scott Rolen. Again, Scott Rolen gets a lot of defensive points where he might have been, is there an argument he's a top 3 defensive third baseman all time? I don't know. I think so. And should that guy be in the Hall of Fame? Yes. Think about when you say stuff like that. Think about when you say a sentence like that. Scott Rolen may be the blank, a top 5 defensive third baseman. And it's like, all right, if he didn't hit it all, maybe you don't need to put him in Cooperstown. He hit a ton. It was a problem in the middle of every lineup.
Strong argument for best defensive third baseman of his time.
21.
Off the top of my head, don't have the other candidates for that conversation, but a lot of Gold Gloves in here. So
yeah. So happy for Scott Rolen. I see in the chat right now, Longo going to go off this year. Yeah, might as well. Snakes. Crack up a little WAR, kid. So if you're a small hall guy, you might hate this. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't lived on the internet streets this morning or last night, so I don't know. First tweet on my timeline, Foolish Baseball. I'm smoking the shit that had Scott Rolen. I don't even really know what that means.
He's got the good line on Andrew Jones' candidacy, who we haven't mentioned today, but just his foolishest line on that is, what if I told you the best defensive center fielder ever also had 400 homers? And
yeah,
Andrew Jones kind of not making that much leeway. He's close to 60% now, rather.
I mean, Andrew Jones, Scott Rolen, I don't hate that. I think Andrew Jones has him beat defensively a little bit, but for who those players were at their time, and that's the thing, like they're going to get in. So you could spin yourself in Hall of Fame circles between small hall and what ballot are they going to get in and all that. Rockies fans, if you're bummed out today, you won't be this time next year. Good for Rolen. I think Wagner should be in there. I think Andrew Jones should be in there. Helton should definitely be in there. Beltran's going to be an interesting one for me. I'm going to have to chew through that a little more, especially where his current baseball life is at. But statistically, I think he's there.
Technically, the year that's like keeping him out, he wasn't even actually good.
Right.
The numbers. So I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think it's that. I think Carlos Beltran has a little bit of wait, he's a Hall of Famer? Because, again, I think it's similar to Roland. 70 career WAR. It was always really good. His highest MVP is 4th in the MVP. But, again,
a lot of center field in there.
Can Jolly recook those books? Because, I mean, man, a lot of 9 OPS seasons while swiping bags.
Swiped bags.
41 homers, 42 steals. I mean, the dude put up some monster numbers that I guess
up on you.
And I guess that's the whole thing. In the time, it didn't feel like, whoa, am I watching Hall of Famer Carlos Beltran? It was like, wow, Carlos Beltran's really good. But it's where you stand on the hall. Todd will be in there next year. And yeah, hey, also, we've just ignored a bunch of steroids guys that are arguably some of the best players ever. Barry Bonds, A-Rod.
Whole separate convo.
More updates to come on that another time. Oh, I was going to close this part out with, I went to the theater last night.
Oh, yes.
I saw the MJ musical. Incredible. The guy who plays MJ. I mean, people know MJ. You gotta get that one. Unreal.
He nailed it.
Really good performance. Highly recommend. There was a gentleman, as we're finishing Hall of Fame talk, that I walked by him, and he gave me kind of the look, and then he goes, Ellsbury, no votes.